Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. And for this one I'm doing a little bit special. I'm not gonna be doing news for this episode. And I saw this guy on video or on YouTube, and I watched his video. His name is Windagoon. He's a really good channel. And he went over conspiracy theory Iceberg, which was a really good video, and I highly suggest you check it out if you're into that stuff. But made me think of possibly sports Iceberg, so I did my research and tried to find the best one, and really this is the only one I could really find with some actual theories about the NFL. So I will be going over this iceberg in this video, just tier 1 though, not the entire iceberg, because I will be going in depth on each topic kind of, but for this beginning part of the iceberg, a lot of the theories here are kind of already facts or factual or known to a lot of people, a lot of football fans. So I won't be going too deep into each one, but I will give a lot of background and information on each topic. So now starting off with the first topic in the iceberg is SPYGATE. Now a lot of people know SPYGATE revolving around the Patriots, and just going down some of the facts here. So the first time it happened was in 2007 when the New England Patriots were recording the New York Jets defensive coaches and signals from an unauthorized location during a game. So basically you can record people during a game. You can record everybody. I mean, obviously the coaches' signals are going to be shown even on live television, because they're out in the open and they're supposed to be encrypted, really, so really only the team will know what's happening. It isn't illegal to really record defensive coaches, but in this case the New England Patriots were recording the defensive coaches sideline, from directly on the Jets sideline, which is definitely illegal in the NFL. And the Jets head coach at the time, Eric Mangini, actually reported this to NFL security, which then NFL security found the recordings, and then kind of made New England dispose of them, really. And Eric Mangini said that he wasn't really worried about the Patriots really recording him, but it was kind of weird, and so he reported it to the NFL security. And obviously, just it's kind of weird that they would record, and also illegal that they recorded from the place that they did. And so, the NFL commissioner, Roger Goodell, deemed that a violation of the rules. So after the investigation, Bill Belichick was fined $500,000 and took the Patriots' first round pick in the 2008 draft, which ended up being a 31st pick since they lost in the Super Bowl that year, I believe. And the NFL wanted all notes and recordings regarding the SPYGATE, but the Patriots did not want the notes and or videos to leave the facilities. So Roger Goodell sent NFL authorities to go to the facility, and reportedly they smashed all the cassette tapes that were there, and they also took all the notes that the offensive coordinator, and basically all the notes regarding all these tapes. They put them through a paper shredder, and basically disposed of this. And by many people, they thought it was a little too extreme. One of these people being the senator from Pennsylvania, Arlen Specter, who requested a meeting with NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell in 2008, and then Roger Goodell and Specter both had a meeting, and after the meeting, Arlen Specter, the senator, said that Goodell said that Belichick was actually spying on teams since he became the head coach for the Patriots in 2000s, or in the 2000 year, in the 2000 season, mainly because of the amount of tapes that they actually found at the Patriots facility, which isn't mainly known, I guess, but they were definitely recording a lot of teams throughout Bill Belichick's start of his coaching career with the Patriots. So in a now redacted article by the Boston Herald, they said that the Patriots also recorded the St. Louis Rams walkthrough practice prior to Super Bowl 36 in 2002. This was denied by Bill Belichick, and then after it was denied, that's when Boston Herald redacted the article and apologized for that. And then in a statement during Fox NFL Sunday broadcast, former Dallas Cowboys head coach Jimmy Johnson said that this is exactly what he was asked to do when he was with the Chiefs, and to record sidelines of other players and or record sidelines for other teams. And he also said that a lot of coaches have done it, and they really just try to cover it up and act like it just really never happened. So this definitely was a really big insight into what was really happening in the NFL around this time. And then in 2010, the Broncos were also caught spying on the 49ers, as head coach Josh McDaniels, who many know was the assistant head coach to Bill Belichick from 2001 to 2008, and then he was the head coach for the Broncos in 2010 when this happened, and the video director there was fired soon after they were kind of caught, and it's kind of interesting that Josh McDaniels, also another person that linked to the Patriots organization, was spying. And Josh McDaniels did go back to the Patriots for the offensive coordinator job, and for this offseason has just left to be head coach for the Raiders. So I think they learned their lesson, so I don't think there's going to be a lot of spying for the Raiders organization, hopefully not. And then in, I believe, 2020, the Patriots were also caught in a 2019 case regarding the Bengals, when the Patriots recorded the Bengals during a Browns and Bengals game, the game before the Patriots actually had to play the Bengals, and they were caught by security, and apparently the person that was doing was recording didn't know what they were supposed to be doing, or they just didn't know that was illegal, so they were recording, and upon further investigation, didn't seem like it really went that deep in throughout the organization like the first case in 2007. Just didn't link back to Bill Belichick. So that one kind of ended in a standstill. They just kind of deleted the footage, and not much has really been said about that. But yeah, SPYGATE, really big deal in 2007, and again 2010, and then again in 2020, and really mainly revolving around the Patriots. And we'll see that again in this tier about the Patriots and their scandalous ways, but it is very interesting. Now moving on to another gate regarding the NFL. And the first tier is BOUNTYGATE. Now this scandal now revolves around the New Orleans Saints, and so this basically is consisted of the Saints paying members of the team for injuring opposing teams' players, and this was supposedly happening from 2009, the year that they won Super Bowl 44, throughout and up until the 2011 season, and these are some of the infractions that happened. Afterwards, defensive coordinator Greg Williams was suspended indefinitely, but was overturned a year later, and then he was able to coach again, but obviously not for the Saints anymore. And head coach Sean Payton, who just retired this year, was suspended for the entire 2012 season, which was shown in the Netflix movie, I believe, that just came out. But yeah, Sean Payton was suspended for the entire 2012 season. And that was the first time actually a head coach has been suspended for an entire season since 1978, when Coach Chuck Fairbanks was suspended. And then next, GM Mickey Loomis was suspended for the first 8 games of the 2012 season, and assistant head coach Joe Vitt was suspended for the first 6 games of the 2012 season. And then the organization was fined $500,000, so basically on par with what Bill Belichick had to pay for for SPYGATE, and was revoked of their second round picks in both 2012 and the 2013 draft. According to many players, these bounties have been around the NFL for decades, so obviously something that has been plaguing the NFL, and it's mainly been between players, not really an organization, like in the Saints case where multiple multiple coaches and people in the organization were fueling this bounty pool. Really, it was just between players throughout the NFL to injure or do whatever in a game. And this was mainly outlined in the Saints versus Vikings NFC Championship game, where Bobby McCray and Remy Iodele constantly knocked down Brett Favre, the Minnesota Vikings quarterback, and were hitting him really low near the knees, which obviously is a dirty move, and that caused them actually to be out of the game for a short amount of time, which was a really big hit for the Vikings. I mean, obviously losing your quarterback, really big hit for them. And also in the off season, or sorry, no, not in the off season, but and then another case here after or before the NFC Championship game. There were also many hits on Kurt Warner, Cardinals quarterback at the time, during the divisional game, which is a week before the Vikings game. And Warner also was knocked out of the game for a short amount of time due to a chest injury. But Kurt Warner has said that the chest or the hit that caused the chest injury wasn't really a dirty play. It was, regular tackle. It just caused a chest injury. But throughout the game, there were many hits that, were directed at Kurt Warner, which were very high up or really low. So definitely was causing injuries here. But in the offseason, in the 2010 offseason, the NFL had an anonymous player come forward to say that defensive coordinator at the time, the Saints defensive coordinator Greg Williams, did order bounties on both Favre and Warner for that postseason. And so with that, the NFL opened up an investigation where all employees and players of the organization denied the bounty program in question, and the player that did come forward also recanted their allegations against the team. Now late into the 2011 season, the NFL found more evidence that Williams actually started, the defensive coordinator Greg Williams actually started the bounty system soon after his arrival with the team in 2009, which I'll remind you, the NFL was suspected that the Saints bounty program started in 2009, which furthers their theory that definitely Williams possibly started this bounty program. And they found more evidence, which possibly had approximately 22 to 27 players included into the pool. There was also evidence of head coach Sean Payton and general manager Mickey Loomis covering the scheme up after not being able to shut it down by the team owner Tom Benson's orders. So Tom Benson was the owner, and he asked Sean Payton because I believe in 2010 the NFL came down on the Saints to kind of find if BOUNTYGATE was real. They didn't really find much up until this 2011 investigation opened up again. So he asked Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis to try and shut the BOUNTYGATE down, but Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis were unsuccessful. So they really just tried to cover it up. And so then, during this 2011 investigation, Greg Williams was also accused for running these schemes, these bounties, as defensive coordinator for Tennessee, Washington, and then as head coach for the Buffalo Bills. So definitely were really high positions and a lot of teams. So they during the investigation, the NFL decided really to focus on the Saints BOUNTYGATE, as it was the main focal point of this investigation. And they really kind of saw these other teams as secondary options, which they can come back to for more evidence. But really, that investigation on all those teams in BOUNTYGATEs didn't really go any further. And then in 2012, ESPN reported that the whistleblower for this BOUNTYGATE was actually defensive assistant Mike Corello, who was let go by the team in 2009 due to poor performance and lying about personal leave. And Corello was stated that he was mad at the organization for letting him go, and that's why he kind of reported to the NFL all of this bounty that was happening, especially kind of lines up with the timeline here. 2009, he was let go after the 2009 season, and 2009 is when the BOUNTYGATE started. So the evidence was kind of lining up here for the NFL. And then on March 2nd, 2012, ESPN reported that the NFL found irrefutable evidence based on review of 18,000 documents showing players buying into the pool for the bounties dating back to 2009, obviously supporting the claim that the BOUNTYGATE started upon Williams' arrival. And the earning system. So the earning system really, so if a kicker lands a returner inside the 20-yard line, that kicker or punter gets $100 added. And then players having the opposing team's players carted off would earn $1,500. So players not even being able to stand up and to walk off on their own will, and had to have somebody get a cart out or stretchered off. So I mean, obviously they're putting players' health at risk here. And then a player knockout earns, the defensive player $1,000. So, and the players were encouraged to continue this pool by putting their earnings back in. So they weren't really losing any money. It was just kind of being recycled throughout the pool. And it is theorized that payments doubled or even tripled in the postseason, mainly in the playoffs, which does explain the 2009 run that they had going into the Super Bowl. Payment doubled and tripled, and throughout the years of this BOUNTYGATE from 2009 to 2011, supposedly they were going to the postseason a lot. So I don't know if payments were getting paid to other players. I mean, obviously there was, but I'm not sure how much, mainly because if players were encouraged to pay back into this pool, I don't really know how far they would be going into this. And so then in a memo released by the NFL to all the teams in the NFL, it was posted that the Saints actually had a bounty on Aaron Rodgers, which was a bounty set for, I believe, $5,000 in an email sent to Sean Payton. But I will talk about that later into the research here. And also there was a bounty on Carolina Panthers quarterback Cam Newton, and both of these were in 2011. And then according to the NFL, Saints linebacker Jonathan Vima, who was really the main player that was, suspended for the entire season, actually put $10,000 to any player that could knock Brett Favre out of the game, obviously in that NFC Championship game, I believe back in 2009 or 2010. So definitely, that popped up again. And then here, Saints running back Reggie Bush's agent, Michael Ornstein, also contributed to this pool with $10,000 in 2009 and an undisclosed amount in 2011. There was also more evidence that the Saints placed a bounty on Matt Hasselbeck during the 2011 wild card game, in which I believe they won that one. And then later on in the investigation, Ornstein wrote an email to Coach Payton for $5,000 to any player that knocked out Aaron Rodgers in the 2011 opener, which Payton said that he did not know of the email, but eventually later on into the investigation, he did say that he did read the email, but nothing really was progressed upon with that email. And as I know, Aaron Rodgers was not knocked out of that game, so the $5,000 was not rewarded to any player, but they definitely were trying to knock him out in that game. And then also during this investigation, many Chicago Bears players advocated for their quarterback Jay Cutler, saying that in the second game of the 2011 season, Jay Cutler almost lost his voice after being kicked in the throat by a defender, and also just many hits on Jay Cutler in that game. Many offensive linemen were worried about Jay Cutler in that one. And also Tampa Bay Buccaneers players have came out and they said they were aware of the dirty hits that the Saints were putting on, and they told offensive players to wear extra knee protection and to be aware of plays near the sideline, because that's where the Saints players were mainly getting their dirty hits in, were plays along the sideline. And then, and so Tampa Bay really kind of closed the case out here. Then obviously I talked about the repercussions of these, the entire investigation. Then I believe the Saints did not do well with Sean Payton not as their head coach the following year in 2012. And they did come back. Kind of, and Sean Payton still, his career, as a coach, definitely a well-revered coach. Definitely, there's a possibility that he doesn't make it to the Hall of Fame due to the BOUNTYGATE, but I wouldn't say that he's not out of the Hall of Fame, mainly because it wasn't really his fault. He wasn't placing the bounties really, as of all the evidence that I've seen, that he wasn't putting the bounties on players. So there's a possibility that he does still make it into Hall of Fame, but I definitely know that'll come up again if he does have a Hall of Fame, if he is in the Hall of Fame, or at least nominated for being in the Hall of Fame. As for Greg Williams, he was reinstated back into the NFL, was fired by the Saints, obviously, and then his latest job was with the Jets, and throughout his career as coach, he's been asked about the BOUNTYGATE, and he's either denied the BOUNTYGATE as a whole, or he has said that it's just been happening around the NFL, and the Saints were kind of the main target of this. So as for right now, I believe Greg Williams is not with the Jets, or I don't think he's with the Jets at all. So I think he's just floating around, possibly. So he's not a coach right now. I'm not sure about Michael Ornstein. A lot of the players in the Saints organization during this time were just really fined or suspended for a season, and kind of continued with their day. So yeah, this is definitely a really big epidemic in the NFL around 2012, and they won a Super Bowl because of it, and that was against the Colts, I believe. So it was a really big issue in the NFL. It was really big in the NFL. Now, going into the third topic in the iceberg is fixed Super Bowls. Now, I highly doubt this one, mainly because players are really putting their bodies at risk to play the sport, and I don't really know how you can really script this something that's physical and something that there's a lot of probability and there's not a lot of being able to fix something. But obviously refs fixing games, which I will talk about later on in the iceberg, because it is in tier 1, but refs fixing the games is a possibility, but a main key piece in why people think Super Bowls could be fixed is just storylines. But the first one that people really think about is Super Bowl III, in which the New York Jets defeated at the time the Baltimore Colts. winning 16-7. Now at this time, the NFL wasn't what it was. So the NFL was one organization built with their set of teams, and the AFL, which is now the AFC, they have their own organization at this time, and they kind of just clashed to see whose conference or whose league was better, really. And coming into this game, the Jets were 18.5 underdogs, and 18.5 point underdogs in this game, which was, I believe, the highest, is still the highest point differential before a game has started, and the highest one that sports bettors have actually gotten wrong. And actually, I had the point spread actually wrong as well. So this is really historical here, but mainly Colts defensive lineman Bubba Smith said in his autobiography, Kill Bubba Kill, that the game was most likely fixed to help aid the AFL and NFL merge, and historically this is one of the games that did lead, or that many people point to as one of the games helping the AFL and NFL merge, which was a really big deal, obviously creating the NFL that we know today. Smith also said that he knew it was weird when the Colts couldn't score inside the Jets' 20-yard line, which they were there 5 times in the first half. So that was pretty interesting, but you could also then chalk it up to just the team not playing well in the red zone, and they weren't able to score. And I guess field goals weren't really a big thing back then, so I guess they really couldn't score a field goal. They were really mainly going for a touchdown, so obviously couldn't score there. More evidence that Earl Morrall, who won MVP that season, who was the Colts quarterback, only completed 6 of his 17 passes and threw 3 costly interceptions in the game, his last one being a pick 6, which kind of sealed the deal for the Jets winning the Super Bowl. And again, you can really just chalk this up to a good player having a really bad game in a really big stage. So there's a possibility there, which is mainly why I disagree with Super Bowls being fixed, because you could just have really bad players or people, when people think a team is destined to make the playoffs. Kind of right now with the Rams, they kind of just built a super team. So I mean, definitely they're gonna make it to the Super Bowl, but you can also just say that it's fixed because the Rams had a whole bunch of people. They just got a whole bunch of people miraculously, and then they were able to get to Super Bowl. Many people think the past Super Bowl 55 with the Chiefs and Buccaneers was fixed because the Chiefs up-and-coming team with Patrick Mahomes and the Buccaneers with Tom Brady. Obviously, you'd want the 2 best players, 2 best quarterbacks in the league to go at each other in the Super Bowl. So a lot of people said that one was fixed. Just throughout Super Bowl history, people have been saying that it's fixed. But Don Shula, the Colts head coach at the time, denied these claims and just chalked it up to Bubba Smith just trying to get more promotion for his autobiography, which is also true there. So, I mean, really, Super Bowls being fixed is a possibility, but I highly doubt it, mainly because there's just a lot of things that you have to count in there, and a lot of possibilities, a lot of liabilities. So I would really just chalk it up to people having bad games in a really big stage. Now another theory in the tier 1 is hidden PED results. Now, hidden PED results are obviously, PED stands for performance enhancing drugs, which are obviously illegal in the NFL. And since 2001, there have been at least 258 positive tests for PEDs. And now I really highly suggest that the NFL is hiding these PED results because they don't want, players taking illegal substances to really, have a upper hand in the game. Obviously, as you can see from BOUNTYGATE and SPYGATE, they really are kind of cracking down on teams that are really trying to get an upper hand. But it is possible that many teams are hiding PED results of their star players. Now, the NFL kind of reaches out to the teams, I believe, to set up these PED tests for players. And I mean, you can, I believe they had to do substantial evidence to show that they didn't have the PED, like the test didn't showed up as positive, but there's a possibility that teams have just had their star player, they test positive for performance enhancing drugs, but again, they want that upper hand, and it's their star player. They can't have their star player out, so they really just said that the tests came back negative and they weren't taking any PEDs, which is a possibility. And I will talk later on in the iceberg, as it is in the iceberg, but many teams have also covered up concussions for many players, so it is a possibility that many teams could have covered up PED violations in order to gain an upper hand. Now, the next big scandal here revolves around the Patriots once again, and it's DEFLATEGATE, which many people know. I think this is really mainly the high up on the iceberg, basically not even on the iceberg, because basically everybody knows it, but it's allegations that Patriots quarterback Tom Brady and the Patriots organization ordered for the footballs to be deflated in a win against the Indianapolis Colts in the 2014 AFC Championship game. And I believe this was also during the 2016. This is still going on. So they're doing an investigation on the 2014 season. And this was pretty late on into the 2016 season, where the Patriots were playing the Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl. So many people, did not really pay attention to this, mainly because it was happening like right around the time of the Super Bowl, but it was a lot of what a lot of people were talking about around the time. But yeah, so they just ordered a lot of footballs to be deflated, and this case really ended up with Tom Brady being suspended for 4 games, and the Patriots were actually fined $1 million and were forced to forfeit 2 draft selections in 2016. So a little bit of background here. So when the case initially closed, Tom Brady's suspension was actually called off, and he did play the entire 2015 season, and then which they obviously won the Super Bowl 51, beating the Seattle Seahawks, and Tom Brady actually won the MVP that year. So obviously called off, but the case was actually later reopened, and Tom Brady was actually found guilty, I guess, and they reinstated the suspension of 4 games, now inflicting that upon the 2016 season, where it's mainly where Jimmy Garoppolo comes into play when the Patriots played him in the regular season, which later let him become the 49ers quarterback, and also Jacoby Brissett, who later on became the kind of bounced around the league. Right now he's with the Dolphins as a backup quarterback for Tua Tagovailoa. So this case really opened up a lot of players' careers at the quarterback position. But going into the case, so the official NFL rules is to keep the footballs inflated within a gauge pressure of between 12.5 and 13.5 psi, which is pounds per square inch. So before 2006, the home team was allowed to only use their footballs during the game. So the opposing team was also using the home team's footballs. And then after the 2006 season, the NFL reinstated a rule that both teams would have to bring their own footballs, and then those teams would play with those footballs on offense. So the Patriots obviously playing with their balls, or playing with their footballs on offense, and then the Colts in this case playing with their footballs on offense, which is a really key piece into this one. So to further go on, so early reports suggest that the Colts and Baltimore Ravens first suspected that the footballs of the Patriots were, the footballs the Patriots were using in the games against each team might have been deliberately underinflated to gain an illegal advantage during the 2014 NFL regular season. Now, the Ravens were really the first team to really point this out in 2014. They said these balls, they're kind of deflated. There's a possibility, but they didn't really have any substantial evidence to really go about it. So it was kind of put off. Having a deflated ball is actually a pretty good advantage if you're the quarterback, in this case, playing with your own footballs on offense. So you're able to really grab the ball a little bit tighter, and you're able to control the ball and where it's going if it is underinflated. That is one advantage to it, and that's why it was such a big thing, because of the possible advantages that the Patriots were having in this game. Or in these games in 2014. And this kind of got postponed until the 2014 postseason during the AFC Championship game. So before the AFC Championship game, the Colts actually alerted the NFL that the Patriots were using underinflated footballs, but they really didn't have any substantial evidence once again to prove that they were. So they ended up playing the game in the AFC Championship game in 2014. And in the game, DeQuell Jackson, Colts linebacker, actually intercepted Tom Brady. And after the play was over, Jackson handed the ball to the Colts equipment manager for safekeeping, because he just intercepted Tom Brady in the playoffs. But during halftime, the ball was actually given to NFL security, because the first inspection, NFL ref Jerry Austin stated that 11 of the 12 balls that the Patriots were using were actually 2 PSI less than the minimum that the NFL had. And then during the investigation, it was said that only one ball was under the minimum PSI level. And then, again, upon further review, the third inspection during this case, another ref, Clete Blakeman, who's a really highly known ref, has said that 5 of the 11 balls were actually measured to be below 11 pounds of PSI, which is way below the minimum of 12.5. So it was really brought in there. So that was a really big thing, because there are so many reviews. So the first one, obviously, being 11 out of the 12 footballs were underinflated, and then the second review, only one football was underinflated underneath the minimum, and then just a few, and then most of the balls were underinflated by just a few ticks. Was the second investigation. And then the third investigation, 5 of them were actually below 11 pounds, and then the rest of them were a few ticks under. And the first inspection was at halftime, and they were going to investigate the Colts footballs, but really, as I know from the research, the Colts really only had, most of their balls were actually just properly inflated, so they didn't really have any problems with that one. But they were running out of time, so they had to go back into the game at halftime, which the Patriots led 17-7. And then, but after halftime, the refs did reinflate the rest of the footballs on the Patriots side, and the Patriots did end up winning that one 45-7. So it really didn't play that much of a role. So people were saying that there's not much advantage, because they were already winning 17-7, and then they just only furthered that lead. They weren't losing. But during the investigation, it was seen that a Patriots locker room attendant took 12 footballs from each team into a restroom for approximately 90 seconds, which is theorized that he was taking air out of some of the footballs. And the investigation obviously closed in 2016. All that jazz. Tom Brady suspended for 4 games. The team had to pay fines, and it's still kind of a running joke for Tom Brady here, just the deflated balls. Yeah, it was a really big issue there. And for me, as like a little kid, I was watching the Super Bowl and I was like, oh yes, everybody's a Tom Brady hater at this point. So I was definitely hating on Tom Brady's, and I was like, oh, maybe the Super Bowl goes back to the Seahawks, which I will talk about this Super Bowl later on in the Iceberg regarding that throw that the Seahawks did in the Super Bowl that ended in the Patriots winning the Super Bowl. We'll talk about that because I believe it is in the next year, which I'm very excited to do that one because that one is pretty extensive on that one. But yeah, the Patriots Deflategate, really big issue in the NFL when it happened, and it's been closed, but it is still a running joke within the NFL community. Now, the next theory into the Iceberg is actually tanking. Now, tanking refers to just a team doing bad on purpose in order to gain the good things about being a bad team. So, obviously, a good draft pick, number 1 draft pick. And this was mainly pointed at in the 2011 season, when the Colts actually possibly purposely tanked for Andrew Luck, Stanford quarterback, who was really good. So they were like, we could probably tank for Andrew Luck. And this was mainly, they had Peyton Manning at the time, but he was injured with a neck injury before the season started, and so he was just out for the rest of the season. So they definitely needed a quarterback, and they had three quarterbacks that were really revolving around there, and just it wasn't good. They started the season 0-13. They possibly were gonna be the third or the second team at the time to have an 0-16 record, to join the Detroit Lions in 2008 season, who had an 0-16 record. But the Colts actually won a game, and they ended off the season 2-14, and they actually ended up in a tiebreaker game for the first pick, in which many people thought that they tanked because they actually benched Dan Orlovsky, who was, I guess, their best quarterback, who wasn't that good, but he's the best quarterback of the carousel. So they benched him during the game, so they thought they were actually tanking for the first pick to get Andrew Luck. They ended up getting the first pick to get Andrew Luck. From there, history's made. Everybody knows how good Andrew Luck and the Colts are now. But Andrew Luck did retire like 2 years ago, and pretty surprising retirement. But obviously Andrew Luck had a really good career with the Colts, and who knows where the Colts would be if he continued to play. But he did have a lot of injuries, and the Colts organization didn't really do that well with him, I'd say, trying to keep him healthy and surround him with the best players. So Colts, they made it to multiple postseason runs, but again, 2014 with the Deflategate, they made it to the championship round against the Patriots, but they definitely weren't able to get anywhere close to the Super Bowl, or they weren't able to win any AFC championship games to make it to the Super Bowl. So before Andrew Luck's retirement. And it's funny that I talk about this now because the current Brian Flores investigation going around, that Brian Flores stated that Dolphins owner was actually paying, Dolphins owner Stephen Ross would actually offered up paying $100,000 per loss that the Miami Dolphins had, and obviously, the Dolphins have been doing pretty good for the past couple seasons. Sorry, I just hit my mic. But, the Dolphins have been doing really good for the past couple seasons, especially with Tua. Mainly the issues were with that Brian Flores wanted to not continue with Tua, but the organization wanted to continue with Tua, so they kind of just let go of Brian Flores. And Brian Flores, obviously really key piece in this offseason so far, talking about how the Rooney Rule, where a team has to interview a head coach or a black head coach, at least interview them for the job. And a lot of teams have shown many black coaches that they're not interested by just not really interviewing them, just kind of showing up, oh yeah, we're just doing this interview for the Rooney Rule, and then kind of just not going with that interview at all. So Brian Flores has also stated that about the NFL, and then now about this purposely tanking. Hugh Jackson has come out saying that the Browns owner also offered him money for losing games, but then it was later on denied by the former Browns owner, and then the statement was recanted by Hugh Jackson, who was former Browns head coach. So the tanking, I'm not too sure, but the Colts, really big piece in that one. The Eagles, in last season, preventing the Giants from making it to the playoffs by purposely benching Jalen Hurts, or Doug Peterson benching Jalen Hurts in that last game against Washington to see who either makes it to the playoffs, Washington or New York, and Washington ended up winning that game, which made Washington go into the playoffs, which they had to face the Buccaneers that year. But it is still under investigation. It is pending. Who knows how it's going to really end, but it's kind of popular now that a lot of teams possibly are tanking. A lot of teams, a lot of players say that they don't really want to tank, mainly because, you're putting these bad players in positions to lose. Obviously, you're seeing, the 76ers seem like they are kind of purposely tanking. They got rid of basically anybody good and then got more draft capital and trust the process. And that kind of set them up for the roster that they have now with Joel Embiid and no more Ben Simmons, but Ben Simmons was there, and a lot of players that they drafted now to build this 76ers team that's in the postseason. Another way of tanking. The Browns, former owner who traded a lot of players for the Browns organization to get more draft capital, which led to them getting 2 picks in the top 4 in 2018 draft, I believe. In which they got Baker Mayfield with the number 1 pick when they went 0-16, and then with the 3rd pick, I believe they got, or not with the 3rd pick, with the 3rd pick, I think they got Nick Chubb, if I'm correct, and then, or no, they got Denzel Ward, I think. I'm not really too sure about the draft, but they actually had 12 overall picks in that 2018 draft, so it's a really big draft for the Browns, kind of making them where they are now, going into the postseason with Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, Denzel Ward, really just Jedrick Wills. There's a lot of good players on that team, a lot of young talent. Is tanking still going on? Possibly it's going on, but a lot of teams really, like the Lions, a lot of teams want them to tank. They showed that they don't really tank because the Lions actually got the 2nd pick when they had a chance at actually getting the number 1 pick, but they ended up beating the Packers the last game of the season and the Jaguars actually beat the Colts at the end of the season. So Lions did not tank that one for the 1st pick. So there are a lot of teams that are really bad that just don't tank, like the Jets, who were up for number 1 pick. But they ended up winning some games late again, which made them have the 2nd pick, and the Jaguars with the number 1 pick. Just a lot of teams that possibly could have been tanking, but we don't really know because it's not really pointed out. But there are a lot of teams that could be bad on purpose to build a future dynasty. Now, the second to last topic on the iceberg for Tier 1 is refs betting. Now, refs betting, that is a pretty, well-known but not well-researchable topic, because when I tried to research it, there wasn't a lot of information, but the main one came up about the Lakers-Kings game, which is basketball related, so I will talk about that one later when I hopefully go over the NBA Iceberg, but that one was a pretty big game. But with the refs betting, there's a possibility that the refs could have been betting in the NFL for a long time, and we just don't really know. I mean, if you really put it in perspective, basically the entire game is up to the refs. The refs are calling all the calls, the defensive pass interference, which we'll talk about later, and just flags, hands to the face, kind of setting up games for teams to win. And who's to say that they don't bet on these games to help them win more money? And because the game's really all in their hands. Teams can do whatever they can do to win a game, but when it comes down to it, if let's say the Buccaneers get a really big yardage gain, they get a big catch or something, then that could just be pulled back for a holding penalty that nobody saw, but the refs can be like, yeah, we saw a holding penalty there, and so we're just gonna call it back 5 yards. That can be the game right there. So there's a lot of possibility of the refs possibly betting in games. There's not any research to say confidently and concrete that refs do bet on games, but there is a high possibility that they do. Now for the last one, we have the DPI theory and the DPI inconsistency theory. Now, this mainly, from what I've been seeing, it's not really researchable because it's DPI is kind of like a interesting term, really only football related, so you can't really look it up. I'm not really too sure, but with defensive pass interference calls, they've been really mainstream throughout the NFL as of late, mainly due to a 2018 Saints and Rams game where there was really a defensive penalty. There was no way that's not a DPI. Saints defender comes in on a Saints, or a Rams defender comes in on a Saints offense, wide receiver to catch a possible game-winning ball in the playoffs. Rams player hits him before the ball even gets him. It's definitely a catchable ball, and the refs didn't call it a defensive pass interference, which again could lend to possibly the refs betting on games to kind of get this point gap. But the Rams, I believe one of the referees, I was watching a video, there's a whole lot of videos on this game, but possibly that a ref's player was a Rams player, or a ref was possibly a former Rams player, so that's why he didn't call the call. There's a lot of theories regarding this call, because it was such a really deciding factor into who won that game. If the Saints get that catch, or even if they get the defensive pass interference call, the Saints are in alignment to win that game, make it to the Super Bowl, and play the New England Patriots. And who knows how good that one would have been, because that Super Bowl was really boring. But the Rams, they get that defensive penalty. They get away with the defensive penalty. They end up winning the game, make it to the Super Bowl, and end up losing to the New England Patriots 13-3 in that Super Bowl. So, really big. It was a really big call there. But throughout the years so far, the defensive penalty calls are just kind of 50-50. You're either gonna get one that's well-deserved, or you're going to get one that's not well-deserved, or you're just not going to get one at all. Lots of defensive penalty interference, defensive interference penalties. They're definitely something to look out for, but it's really subjective to what the ref thinks is a defensive pass interference. And some refs do call it good, some refs just let them play, and some refs just call defense, like if the wide receiver gets touched, that's defensive pass interference. They are kind of cracking down on a lot more, which has led to some calls that are not deserved to be called pass interference be called pass interference, and then when they're heavily scrutinized for that, then refs don't call pass interference calls. It's kind of like a whole cycle of just defensive pass interference calls. And so the theory is that there's possibly a chance that the defensive pass interference calls will never be fixed in the NFL, and we just have to kind of sit here and watch as the refs kind of just miss these defensive pass interference calls, which is not liked by any NFL fan, because we like to see the game be called fairly. And obviously some chances have been, put in the air because, calls haven't really been played, and also just calls that are really unnecessary. So that's the DPI theory, and that's the conclusion of the first tier of the iceberg. Just let me know if you like this type of content. I'm not sure. I just wanted to do something different, kind of step away from the news part of the sports industry, I guess. And I will talk about the future of the channel next. Now, I do kind of want to step away from the news element of NFL and NBA, NCAA football, and NCAA basketball. I'd really just I kind of want to do more documentary series or more informational series regarding these throughout the league. I think I'll continue to do that. I think I'm just gonna step away from the news part of the channel, which has definitely gotten me where I am now. But I think it's just better for the channel if I go more into the informational series part of the channel. But I will be reposting a lot of news. I will keep up with the news alerts on the Instagram channel. So if you do want to keep up with the latest sports news, you can follow the Instagram at high_scores_podcast. But I think it'll definitely be good to kind of step away from the news side of it, and go more into this information deep dive throughout all these sports leagues. I think just let me know what you guys think about the content here. But thank you very much for listening all the way through if you're on a podcast platform, and thank you for watching all the way through if you are on YouTube. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.